Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gentle Business Space podcast. I'm Fabi. I'm a virtual assistant, systems expert and coach, and I support other female business owners to create a business that helps them grow without burning out. And today I want to talk about a topic around capacity. I think it's a really important one. I think capacity is something that we ignore a lot of the times and instead follow the outside advice of how we should structure our business, how we should work, and especially how much we should work. I think there can be a lot of pressure of how many hours we should be working or we think we should be working. The whole thing around being more productive. I think that's a big one. I think we're constantly trying to be more productive, to be more organized, in order to get more done. And all the planning in the world is so important. It's important to plan, but all the planning in the world we can't ignore our capacity. I can plan for the year, I can plan for the quarter, and often we do that from a very mind perspective. So from a very factual perspective. So this is what I want to get done. These are the goals I want to achieve. This is the time frame I'm setting myself. And these are all the tasks I need to do for it. And that's really important. It's good to have that more factual structure, to be really clear on the outcomes we want to create. And that's really important. However, I think one thing we often forget is our personal capacity. Again, we might compare ourselves to other people, what they're achieving, what they're doing, without realizing that they might be, for one, at a different stage in their business. So if they've already been a few years or quite a long time in business, they might be able to do more because they're more used to different tasks. But then we compare ourselves, even if we're maybe in the beginning or the mid stages, to somebody who's been running their business for 10, 20 years. And it looks like they're doing it all. And we compare ourselves to that, kind of that goal. And secondly, with that as well, is a lot of the people we compare ourselves to usually have support. So we think they do it all, and they're doing a lot, don't get me wrong. But from my experience, a lot of people get support, and that's great. I think it's something that's really important, especially as women. I think we can sometimes be very driven to do it all by ourselves, but we really don't have to. So it's great that people get support, but it's really important that we don't compare ourselves to that and hold ourselves to that standard of somebody who's posting, 3 times a day. It's a bit extreme, but we're doing all these fancy reels and all sorts of things. When you're just by yourself, your capacity around that is going to look differently. So that just, as I just say, stopping the comparison to what other people are achieving, and then really coming back to our own capacity. So as always, it's not something we can compare ourselves with others. It's very personal to you. And especially as sensitive women, as sensitive business owners, that capacity might look different. And it takes a lot of mindset work and sitting with it and journaling to accept that sometimes, that maybe we can't do it all. And I know that's been challenging for myself and other people I've spoken to, because we want to do more. We want to push ourselves, but actually a lot of the time it goes against our capacity. So accepting that we maybe can't do everything in a day, in a week, can be really difficult. So I do want to acknowledge that. But when we start to make that shift, it actually becomes easier, and ironically, we do get more done. It's the same as doing too many things at the same time. It gets chaotic, and we don't really get anything done. But instead of really listening and planning, start to plan, according to our capacity, so much changes. And with capacity, I also mean kind of really becoming aware of our own nervous system, knowing what nourishes us, what drains us, what works for us. And these are things like, how do you like to work? How many hours a day can you sustainably work? What are your preferred ways of working? Is it one-to-ones? Is it group sessions? Is it, if you're a yoga teacher, do you like running retreats? But also not just what you're running, or if it's workshops or whatever it is. So for one, it's what are you running? Does that work with your capacity? Is it something that works for you? But also, do you need space before and afterwards to rest and restore, to have some breathing space, to fill up again, basically? Because a lot of the time what we do, as I said, we plan with our mind. So we may, I don't know, put in 5 one-to-one clients because you have technically the time, or book retreats one after another, or multiple workshops, or, we fill our calendar because the space is technically there, but we forget our own capacity of how we need to nourish ourselves before and after, how it depletes us personally. So that's something we can start looking at when we're planning. So yes, we can start planning with our mind. We can start, putting these things in. I want to launch this course. I want to have that many one-to-one clients. Excuse me. And at the beginning, it's going to be a little bit trial and error. Really noticing what works for you, what doesn't. Does that actually work with my capacity? What if I have a bad day on that day? Because that's all part of it. So really taking that emotional, energetic kind of piece into it, because otherwise we keep pushing ourselves, we kind of keep going past our capacity, and that is our kind of slow path, sometimes very fast path to burnout. So taking that into consideration might be a great first step. And that can start very gently on a daily basis, noticing how you're feeling, how you're doing that day, and what your to-do list looks like. And I think one thing with that as well, so we have capacity in the space of that kind of emotional capacity, our nervous system capacity, but also capacity with things we have to do outside of our business. And again, I think it's something we often ignore. But our life and our business aren't separate. So I can plan a launch, or I can plan a new course, or anything like that. Or how many clients I technically like to have that month. But maybe there's a holiday planned. You want to take some time off. Or maybe you'll have a loved one that you're caring for. Or maybe you know that after running a certain event, you need time to rest. Maybe you're unwell yourself. There's so many things. Maybe you have children to look after. So we have to consider these things. We can't just plan our business and ignore all of that. And that means that we then, in those spaces, sometimes have to adjust our capacity of how much we can actually work. So we don't set ourselves up to failure, because on the mind level, it might be, no, it's fine, I'm going to push through, I can do it. But actually it comes to it, and then you're distracted. You're not really there because actually you won't have the time properly off, for example. But you end up kind of half working, half being, half taking time off and not really fully committing to it. And occasionally that might be the case, and that's fine. But long term, we want to consider those things outside of our work and how it might affect our capacity whilst we're working, and how much we can actually get done and achieve. So basically, it's really about reducing our workload so much more and making what we're doing more focused. Because when we take that into consideration. Maybe we're only setting one goal for the month instead of 5. But we're really focusing on that and actually moving forward with it without burning out. We're really dedicating time slots to it because we actually looked at our calendar and noticed, okay, I have, 3 slots of an hour that I can work on this project. Let's see what I can get done in that time, instead of having 20 tasks that we need to push into all of those spaces. So sometimes it's about adjusting our workload, how much we want to put out, how much content we want to put out, for example, how much time for delivery we have available. So let's say this podcast, it's very common to usually have a weekly podcast episode. And yes, that might be good for growth. But I knew I didn't have the capacity for that with delivering client work, doing my virtual assistant work, setting up websites, other projects I'm working on, and my coaching clients and other things that I would like to do. So that's the delivery part, plus the marketing side of my business. I knew I wouldn't have the capacity to record weekly podcast episodes and accordingly edit them and share them. So I opted for 2 weekly, and that works for me at this stage of my business. Maybe at some point things shift in my business where I won't be so much in delivery mode and have more space to do weekly episodes. But I'm open to that. I'm open to changing that and going along with my capacity. So far, I've noticed this works much better for me. I know I would be stressed doing weekly episodes and knowing that I then would feel like I'm failing because I can't keep up with it. So it sounds, sometimes we do set ourselves up for failure because we expect so much from us, which isn't realistic within our capacity and within realistic timeframes that we have available. And I think one thing that's really important here as well is that once we're aware of our capacity, our nervous system, how we like to work. So it always starts with that nervous system, that awareness of testing a little bit. Does this work for me? Does that not work for me? How many hours a day does feel right? I've tried to keep pushing myself past a certain amount of hours off, especially delivery time, and obviously other things come on top of that. And I might be able to do that for a day, but then I got really moody and I just didn't enjoy it. So I've learned to notice how many hours feel right. And that means then shifting, which for one can be really hard to accept when you think I should be working more hours because everyone else is, or I work more hours in my day job. But ultimately that's part of our vision, isn't it? You're creating the business that you want to have and the amount of hours that you want to work and that work for your nervous system. But what that means is as well that we then adjust our business accordingly so it can support our capacity, that we offer things and deliver them in a way that supports our capacity, that we, as I said, share in a way that supports our capacity. So we just touched on that a little bit. So really adjusting it to what time do you actually have available without constantly having to feel behind. And yes, those moments are obviously going to come because there's unpredictable things. You might be ill, you know, it might be extra busy time, and sometimes you can't always take that into account, or it just comes very suddenly. And then we might feel a little bit behind. And that's okay. We get through that. It might be a time of working a little bit more. But ultimately, I think we don't want that on an ongoing basis, that constant feeling of being behind, but rather creating a little bit more space, a little bit more gentleness and compassion for yourself to really acknowledge what space and time and capacity I actually have for me individually, for my life circumstances, for my business, for my nervous system, what works for me and what doesn't. And then making those gentle shifts. And again, like always, it's not like a change everything for tomorrow. Now you're cancelling every appointment to create more space. But you gradually make shifts that work towards that direction of supporting your capacity more. Next time you're planning for your quarter or for your year, taking that a little bit more in consideration, all those tasks that come with a new project, with a new offering, really mapping that all out and thinking about how much time is that actually going to take, and maybe setting less goals and giving yourself a little bit more time to achieve them, so that you don't end up overwhelmed and exhausted and constantly pushing further than you actually can. I'd love to know your own take on this. Is this something that you've experienced yourself? Are you currently very aligned with your capacity, or is it something that you might want to work on? Maybe there's some shifts you want to make. I'd love to know, as always, so let me know in the comments. And I hope you found today's session useful as well. Again, share any insights you had, anything you're taking away from today's session, and any shifts you'd like to make. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.